To Wall Street now, where stocks jump on the news. President Trump called off tariffs on European allies and reached a framework on a deal on Greenland. The Dow ended 588 points in the green today, one day after a dive that marked Wall Street's worst drop since October. Let's bring in CBS News senior business and technology correspondent Jo Ling Kent. Jo Ling, thanks for being with us. Walk us through the market reaction today.
Well, essentially, before the opening bell even rang, futures turned into the green when President Trump said he would not use force on Greenland. Then, a few hours later, the president saying that these tariffs that he had threatened were now paused, and that really sent the rally further into the green, as you can see there on your screen. But there was a major consequence yesterday on the markets. Investors really pulled back. They went to safe havens like gold and silver as the president threatened these tariffs that would, hit everything from pharmaceuticals, autos, luxury goods, and on down the line. The White House seems to have received that message and seen some of the reaction out of Davos and throughout the European Union, and this happened today. So that really is the market reacting to the news on Trump pulling back on his threats.
We're also following this other headline, Jo Ling. The Supreme Court heard oral arguments today in the case over President Trump's efforts to fire Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. Any indication of where the justices are leaning in this case?
We were listening to the presentation of all the arguments and hearing from the justices on that audio feed live today. And what was indicated very clearly is across the political spectrum, left to right, in terms of these justices, there is a sense of skepticism about the president's approach to attempting to remove Lisa Cook as a Fed governor. In fact, Justice Kavanaugh, a conservative justice, had some really interesting things to say, and he basically posited that if the president's position was adopted or accepted, he said it would weaken, if not shatter, the independence of the Federal Reserve, and it would potentially open the door for future presidents on either side of the aisle to terminate Fed officials at will. And that would be bad for the economy, it would be bad for global markets, and that independence of the Fed seemingly, for many of the justices asking questions today, seems sacred and special. So we have seen some major signals that the president may not emerge victorious on this, and that certainly would give a lot of confidence to investors. And as for consumers and taxpayers here in the U.S., the Federal Reserve is an incredibly important part of the financial system, monetary policy, and this would maybe also breathe a sense of relief into the markets as well.
Yeah, and just to be clear, Jo Ling, if President Trump does win this case, could that clear the way for him to fire Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell? I mean, is that what's at stake here?
Well, that is a separate issue where Fed Chair Jerome Powell says that, these subpoenas have been served in a criminal investigation into the spending of the renovation of the Fed. But what's interesting, what we saw today at the Supreme Court is that if they do issue an opinion that is not in favor of the president, maybe that takes 1 or 2 months. That could also be coming out right around the same time that the president plans to nominate and have hearings for the new Fed chair that he's been teasing now for months. So we'll see how all of this plays out. But certainly it seems that the justices understand the critical importance of the independence of the Federal Reserve and what it can do, and how this decision is very monumental. In fact, no sitting president has ever fired a Fed governor in its 112-year history. Doing that would have major, major economic consequences.
Jo Ling Kent, thank you so much.